Okay. So also, if you guys, while yay, we live. Hey, Facebook, how you doing? Welcome. We are live on my Facebook and also my Instagram here. So I'm sorry if I break eye contact with either one of my audiences, but yeah, we're gonna have quite a in-depth conversation. I see a few people have requested to join. I definitely will go back in about maybe 10, 15 minutes. I just want to start this conversation um, to talk about, obviously, the issues I want to discuss. And then I have a question that's already in my Instagram box, which I'm going to address, which is something that I wanted to address also. And so if you have any additional questions, you can either put it over here on my Instagram or you can send me a message here on Facebook. Okay, guys. So wow, this weekend was incredibly revolutionary, and I woke up with this morning with so much energy, and I owe that energy and feeling and inspiration to Lerato Molloy. Uh, I salute her for her bravery. I send so much love and strength to her. And when I say Lerato Molloy, it's not just her because when one person stands up against gender-based violence, they're standing up for so many. And even after there's many attempts of breaking her, on top of the trauma that she's faced, um, she still stands. And so it's important to understand that when somebody experiences any form of trauma, it's not just the physiological, but it's also neurological level that it is also affected. And why counseling or psychosocial support is so important and so necessary is because, in my opinion, it is to help with the healing. And I use the word help very um, um, deliberately because the pain never goes away. The healing and the support provide mechanisms for you to cope with that pain, and especially mechanisms for you to cope when you are triggered because of that initial pain. Now, for those of you who don't know what triggering is when a person, institution, a smell, a scent, anything reminds you of an initial trauma or incident or place where you felt unsafe or you were harmed. And it can happen to anybody. Um, just a couple of weeks ago, I was triggered after seeing just a name that was associated with really trying to break myself down and so many other survivors down. And unfortunately, when post-traumatic stress or triggering happens, we have no control over what it does to our body. And my activism career started 9 years after the first time I'd acknowledged abuse, and that was already 17 years ago. So I was in a relationship with a boy when I was at varsity. It was abusive, it was physical, it was emotional, it was sexual, psychological on so many levels. But it took me almost 9 years to really come to terms with it. But more importantly, 9 years that I stopped blaming myself for what had happened. And I realized that, if I was going through that, there's so many other people that were going through that. And that is when I started with my activism. But I needed to understand why I was feeling that way. And so I did my training through an organization. And through the training, we did training in counseling, in court preparation. But for me, the most important thing of that training, which then helps with my counseling and then helps with trying to provide support for those that speak out, is that there's so many myths and misconceptions around abuse that has often led to media, to corporate, to social, pushing the agenda of victim blaming, and without even realizing it, and in some cases realizing it, that you're actually promoting and protecting the perpetrator. And so over the last 17 years, working in those spaces, learning more through additional training, working with other organizations and trying to push this, people think that if you work in that space, you're not going to get affected by abuse on other levels. Well, unfortunately for me, it did happen. And it's very important for me to share this, because what happened to me within the TV and film industry was unacceptable. But it also shows a reality of what is happening to so many other actors and actresses. And what for me was astonishing and incredibly worrying was that when this happened, and I'm going to tell you the intricacies of what had transpired. But what worried me was that myself, as a veteran actress who's been in the industry for over 25 years, what they were trying to make me do and how they were trying to undermine me and gaslight me and intimidate me, if they were doing that to me, who is known as a revered activist who speaks up for women's rights, that means that they're definitely doing it to young actors who are just coming into the industry, who still don't know and are still learning and still want to please. So I took a break from my acting career for a couple of years to focus on myself, focus on producing my agency. And when I decided to go back to acting, I joined a soapie in South Africa. And of course, like always, you read your contract, because contracts are very important to read. And during script readings, I realized that there were quite a few racy and sex scenes. And then I spoke to my then agent, expressing my concern. And she said, whatever you don't want to do, there need to be discussions with producers and management. So this is a number one alert for people coming into the industry, is that if a storyline is written in where you need to do a kissing scene, where you need to take off your clothing, where you need to emulate any form of sexual activity, this needs to be discussed with you beforehand. And then you need to agree and put down the terms of what you want, what you're comfortable in wearing, what you're prepared to do. And if you don't want to, that's also okay. But remember, there's a clause, and I remember in my contract, I think it was clause 20.1, that stated, are you prepared to go semi-nude, or is it better to go naked? And I said no. And so that's very, very important. And then if you do agree to those to those terms, and it needs to be terms that you are comfortable with, then what should happen should be a closed set environment where it is just you, the director, minimal crew. Wardrobe is supposed to be on standby with you, so that the minute the scene is over, a gown is there wrapped around you, and then the scene is wrapped. With me, they tried a different thing. Fortunately, the day that I was shooting the first scene, the director was a lady, and she was very, very progressive. And she asked me what was discussed. I told her where I stood, and she was also as horrified as I was. And we discussed it then and there. Fortunately for me, after every single scene, she checked if I was okay, and I did what I was comfortable with. I refused the wardrobe that was given to me because it was way too revealing. I didn't agree to that, and she also kept it a very, very closed set. Then contacted my agent, and I explained this. Moving forward, things need to change, of course. When things moved forward, things didn't change. Then it got to the point where I was like, okay, these emails going back and forth, but there's no traction happening on the ground. Let's call a meeting with producer, myself. Let's discuss this amicably, because communication is key. Sat down with the production, with the producer at the time, and I was a little bit taken back, because the first thing that was mentioned to me was, well, you didn't tell us you wouldn't want to do these type of scenes or wear this type of clothing. And fortunately, because I'd read my contract, I was able to say, well, you didn't ask me, and it's in my contract, and here, a contract which you gave me. After a discussion, it was decided that those scenes were no longer to be put in, and I can continue doing the work that I was hired to do, and that is to act. A couple of days later, another scene arrived, same scenario. I then called my agent, and of course, by this time, my patience was running thin. And at that point, their patience was also running thin. And so the response I got back from producer was like, well, I better get used to it because my character's crazy. And then my response back was actually, no, I don't have to get used to it because I didn't agree to this. And I didn't agree to this prior to me signing my contract. And then the reaction from my agent was, well, if you don't want to make too much noise, otherwise these people wouldn't want to work with you again. And my response was, well, if they're going to try and force me to do something I don't want to work with them again anyway. Cut a long story short, another scene, couple of months down the line, came. They were trying to do the same thing, and it was a different director. And the director had a conversation with him, and he said to him, he goes, okay, what will happen is you're just going to take off your jacket. You will then lie on top of the bed with the guy and you would kiss him. And I'd agreed to that. We then did the scene. Everything went well. They were then moving cameras. And then the director was like, okay, so just let's step into bed and we're going to put a boob tube on you. And I'm like, no, this is not what was discussed. It wasn't a closed set. I had comments coming from head of camera and crew and telling me what I should do. In the end, I refused to take off my clothing and I did the scene fully clothed. I then put in my resignation, purely because I was just frustrated and clearly the gaslighting and the undermining that was happening on set, I was not prepared to nobody should actually have to deal with that, because at the end of the day, we work so hard on a craft, and all you want to do is go into work and do the best at what you can do. Moving forward, unfortunately, that was a time when I'd found a lump on my breast and I had to go in for surgery, and I let production know in case it was the negative. However, my surgery and my healing time was during the production hiatus, so it didn't affect production whatsoever. So a couple of months down the line, I get a call from the channels asking me if the reason why I resigned was because of my illness. And that took me a bit aback because that wasn't the case. And when I'd resigned, I'd given full detail to the production as to why, as to the conversations and so forth. And so I managed to get a meeting together, and thank you to the South African Guild of Actors for providing that assistance with me and just that support of me, making me realize that actually I wasn't going mad and that my rights I was within my own rights. And, discussions were brought up during the meeting with the channel and so forth. And I put all of these on the table and, question as to why they thought they had the right to lie on my behalf, but also to use my illness without my permission. At the end of the day, gender-based violence is also about consent. Long story short, channel apologized, left, and I continued with my resignation. And of course, I fired my agent then. And the reason why I needed to tell you all of these things is because it happens regularly on different sets. And now what people are doing, and agents, including my ex-agent, and I've heard this from other sources, is that the latest thing is that when an actor or an actress does want to complain or has a sexual harassment complaint that wants to bring attention to the production house, an NDA, which is a non-disclosure agreement, is suddenly brought out. Now I'm telling you, you do not have to sign an NDA without understanding the full contents. You have every right to then call a legal representative or your agent, or have time to read through it properly before signing, because the problem with signing that is that they are muffling you. And production houses are now getting away with allowing sexual harassment to happen on set because the actor has then signed this NDA, and if they speak about it, then they can be sued. And we know in our industry, we do not make a lot of money. We are freelancers. We don't fall under the Labor Act. And so, the reality of us having to face a legal letter and all of that costs us money. And that moves to my next point, is that, when a group of us went up against and spoke out against different levels of sexual harassment and abuse against a well-known filmmaker. It took a lot of us for it took a lot for us to even get to that point. But for me, why it was so necessary to voice my opinion, and why it's so important for us to speak out when it does happen, if we can, is that when the crime happened, it happened many, many years ago. And I brushed it off thinking, well, nobody will really believe me because of who he is. But I'm okay, I got out. But then listening to and reading about how the other survivors and what they went through, and that the tactics that this perpetrator used were exactly the same, the same operators, the same, initially sending a message through LinkedIn, then saying, okay, come up to my room or come to my place and watch my footage on this new documentary I'm doing. All of those things were the same for me. Fortunately for me, when the abuse could have possibly happened, when I listened to my instinct, and that's why it's very, very important to listen to your instinct when you feel you're in danger, was when I clocked when I was in danger, I got out immediately and I could get out. Unfortunately, there were other victims and survivors who didn't get out, and the abuse got worse. Uh, Following day, after I got out, you could see the anger in his eyes and him, calling me names and so forth. And I just dismissed it, and still, once again, did not listen to the agency in my voice that actually you don't have a right to say that to me. And so with why I'm telling you that and why it took so long for all of us to come out is that abuse happens on different levels and treats us all differently, um, depending on the severity of the abuse. And and then of course you think, well, is somebody going to believe me? And then more importantly, our justice system doesn't protect us. So if you don't have that credible like proof, and even with myself, and when I opened up my case, and that's what I also have a problem with the judicial system, was that although there was proof that he had agreed that he admitted to having that interaction with me, the police still didn't see it fit to interview him, and the case was dismissed. Although there was proof from the film festival, so there was still proof from the film festival about the goings on, and proof that there was a hotel room that was booked in his name. There was incidents that had happened, yet SAPS still took it upon themselves to stop the case. And so, moving to the next point of when you go out against a big name, you then deal with the supporters. And of course, then you've got people then wanting to protect themselves because they had known all along. And for me, what was frightening was that many people came and were like, yeah, well, this is what he does. This is what he did. We know. Yet nobody did anything. And even when it happened to myself, I didn't do anything at the time. Yet I was at that point where, listen, this is the time where I can make that change. So there have been many allegations, and there's lots of proof of certain business people that have known and that have even covered up for him and so forth. And I expected that. But what another reality is that there were also a lot of women that in the beginning I thought were on our page and supporting. But they're now looking back at some of the conversations where certain survivors were undermined and told, well, they're unstable because they have underlying medical conditions, was a bit worrying, because even if you have an underlying medical condition, or even if it's a mental illness, it doesn't change the fact that the crime happened and that the person was violated and that they deserve justice. Then another interesting conversation was with another woman saying, well, they're bigger, the guys who have done worse. So maybe we should go after them. So thinking about that, and yes, there are people who maybe have done worse, but what do you consider worse than rape? Because it's still a crime. but I realized that that was trying to distract me from the case at hand. But also it was frustrating because it's meaning it basically they were saying, well, you guys aren't that valid. It's okay. We'll find other people and other cases. And at this and why we do the work that we do is that if you have been violated in any form, your pain is valid, and nobody has the right to undermine that. And so, with speaking out, and I mean, I've bombarded you guys with a lot of information, but it was really triggering and frustrating when reading up about what was happening with Lorraine on that set, and with so many people that also inbox privately, and the lack of transparency and the lack of and the trying of covering up. We need to really bring this to the forefront. And how do we do it on so many levels? And the only way we can bring about change is if you change with what's happening within your own environment. And that is where I started with this one perpetrator, was that it happened to me, yes, but I was also lucky that it didn't go further. The abuse didn't transcend into to other forms of crimes. I could have spoken up. Maybe that could have prevented other crimes from happening. And then if you did know and you have seen, then apologize. We're human, but covering it up because for the sake of production, or because, well, he's a breadwinner, you don't want to take that away from him, or we don't want to embarrass him too much. If he's committed a crime and if he's violated somebody, then we shouldn't be worrying about embarrassing him or worrying about his family. He should have worried about that before he did the crimes. And so what I wanted to, another thing that I wanted to pick up about, and we're going to put this to the group, who's on Facebook and is on Instagram, is that how do we get transparency? For instance, we have organizations, producers organizations, women's organizations. How do we create transparency if, for instance, the co-chair of a producers organization is the head of a production company, and there's a sexual harassment complaint against that company? How do you manage that out? What are your suggestions with that? Does that person then have to recuse for themselves, and the production company then be a case opened against them? I mean, what are the ways of dealing with this? And then also looking at, and this isn't just for TV and film, but just looking at sexual harassment policies of companies, of corporates. How were they drawn up? Who drew them up? Was it drawn up by just industry people who think, okay, well, this is what needs to be done? Or was it drawn up by activists to understand the implications and the effects that different forms of abuse happen, that even understand the different levels of abuse, and that the narrative that is used and the narrative that shouldn't be used? How are these being drawn up? Are you checking up on those? So these are all loaded questions. So I am going to go first to Facebook. Hi, Vangile. Mukibi Tito, all the way from NTV Uganda. Thanks so much for tuning in. Mabato, thank you. Are there any questions I'm going to come through to? I think there was somebody who also wanted to join, but I want to go through some of these questions on Instagram. Oh, there was a question earlier on, before I forget, on Instagram. And I won't mention the person's name because I don't know if I have permission. But the person spoke about working at a radio station, and just before they were about to interview somebody, the guest then sent an inappropriate picture of their genitalia prior on via WhatsApp. So basically sent a dick pic. And this person then had to interview them. Now, I can tell you there are countless scenarios like that. Even the same set that I resigned from, one of the other complaints that I made was about a particular actor who kept on groping his crotch and kept on asking to stop, and it was a joke, and crew got involved. Nothing was really done, and so therefore protecting the perpetrator once again. We now need to hold production companies, we need to hold management accountable for that. So my dear, in terms of what had happened to you, I'm really, really sorry, as I said in the message. And moving forward with that, it should have been management's position to contact the person, tell them that their interview is no longer going to be happening, and tell them the reason why it's not going to be happening, and then possibly find other content for you to go on air, and then explain to the listeners what had happened. For too long, we have silenced the actions of what our perpetrators have done. And with that, we need to show more support to those who speak out. Hence, look at what happened this weekend with Lerato. And as much as she's been through so much, and that's why I started this with honoring her, because if it wasn't for that support and that galvanizing around and calling them out and calling the wrong, that interview would have aired, but also other scenarios would have happened where perpetrators are glorified and so forth, and therefore, you know, enough support given to those who speak out. Okay, let's see. Yeah, I see a few names on both. I know that people have been called to listen to this talk and make sure I don't mention specific names. I will not be silenced. I talk the truth. I speak from agency. And yeah, we need to stop worrying about, you know, industries. Okay, so we got Melanated Goddess. Oh, what a powerful handle. I like that. It's sad that they blackballed you and label you difficult when you stand up for your rights. Absolutely. And that was the production house. And what was even sadder afterwards was that, you know, they feigned this apology in front of Channel. But then after my resignation, you know, the Channel, for whatever reasons it was, did not continue the contract. And when they relayed the news to the cast and crew, and this is verbatim from two people that were present, said, "Well, you can thank Rosie McDonough for losing your job." So not only did they refused to acknowledge what they saw, that what they did was wrong, but then still decided to actually blame other people. It's even worse for female crews who don't have agents and managers. Absolutely. You know, the level of abuse that happens with crew, because it's a male-dominated industry, and you know, sometimes involves heavy equipment and so forth, and also working late hours. You know, we need to look into that in terms of safety mechanisms. One of the other things that I also brought out about this particular production company was that there were times that we were often called for 4 or 5 in the morning, and that's normal for productions to start. But legally, what should happen is that the production is supposed to be present, and many times, if you were shooting in Braamfontein or Maboneng, called early and production aren't even there. So that was even a safety for myself. So if that was happening with me, what would be happening with female crew members? And we, you know, we really need to tackle this and holistically and see, you know, what needs to be done, and also hold people accountable. Polani B, thank you for using your platform to bring this to light. Too often we sweep it under the carpet to protect our income, with them being labeled difficult and emotional. Yeah, and that's why we need to stop that labeling, you know, and you know, we also label as, okay, well, it's just all about our ego, and I've also been in that situation. Now what I've done is that actually I've taken ownership of that. Just like Mona Atahawe, the famous Egyptian activist, has taken ownership of being a feminist giant and being difficult. Because if you're going to ask, if we put into scenarios where we feel unsafe and we cannot conduct our work and our craft that we've trained for and that we are getting paid for, and all because of pathetic male egos and misogyny and patriarchy, that conversation needs to be, and we need to stop that and stop pushing it under the table. Yeah, the word unstable, they really like using that word. But if you also think about it, and now I've taken, that's another word I've taken ownership of, is that actually, well, if you continue to abuse somebody and break them down emotionally, psychologically, physically, at some point we will be a bit shaky and come across as unstable. And as organizations, surely, who's supposed to protect women, surely it should be your job to try and help us and provide healing for us, as opposed to pointing our finger or trying to muffle us. Um, Camphor's Law Clinic, thank you so much for sharing. You're strong. We love you and we celebrate you. Thank you very much. Um, Jesse and Maniacs, I apologize if I'm butchering your name. I really think as long as corporate is still largely run by us men, we will continue to see blatant abuse. True. And I'm glad you are pointing this out. And we will continue to protect each other. Transformation is the only way, in my opinion, 100%. Wayne Stafford, you have supported my journey from day one. Mwah, mwah, mwah. I love you. Thank you so much. Um, so, what do fans and ordinary people do to support survivors in the industry? Mommy feminists, thank you for that. We're at the point now, and if you look at the support that was galvanized around Lerato over the weekend, is that show support where you can. We do need more adequate psychosocial support and longer sessions because a lot of organizations will offer maybe 1 or 2 sessions or 6 sessions. I know that's for government organizations, which for some people it might be enough. But if there are a lot of underlying if there's a lot of underlying trauma, it's not going to take 6 online sessions with a therapist for you to even begin or tap that level of healing that needs to get started. So we need to find spaces where people can get it ongoing. We need more support for those who speak out legally. Remember, if it's a big name, they have PR teams. Even in my case, it goes up as far as government. Yeah, and I've gotten calls, I've gotten the threats. You know, very very close mates with our the country's daddy warbucks, and that's why justice will never be served in that. And so we need stronger support on the legal side for those who speak out for victims and survivors, and also for us to know what our rights are. um, so yeah, so if you in your space, if you know somebody that can maybe provide a bit of additional counseling, that if you're a counselor, we can't expect people to continuously work pro bono, and that's another thing which I want to get into. Um, but if you're in a position where you can have a slot once a week for a survivor, and even if that survivor then fills it for a year until they're fine and then fill it with another survivor, that would be a great help. Talking about pro bono work, and it was my own fault. I mean, I did this because it was when I started doing this work, it was because I'm passionate about it and I'm still passionate about it. But also for activists, is that you need to know your agency and know your work. And so, as much as, and I don't regret putting all the hours and effort into the last 17 years, but looking back at the hours that I put in and actually not getting a cent out from it, but a lot of people using my content, my suggestions, my hours, my blood and sweat, often my tears, that also has debilitating effects on you. So, we're moving to the space now where activists need to be acknowledged for the work that they're doing. And people need to respect that. So if an activist who has that knowledge and has the training is giving suggestions, but you don't believe it because you need to protect your friends, those type of people need to be called out, and we need to bring an end to that. What are the men in the industry doing? Are there raw and honest conversations happening with the industry? Women are speaking about them, but the men seem silent. That is from Toots Malutz, 100%. But this is an issue, that across the board. Every woman knows somebody who's been violated in some ways, but when you turn to a lot of men, they were like, it doesn't really happen to me, or it's not us, or not all men. So yeah, we need a more stronger, powerful, and honest voice from the African man, and to listen, and not dictating voice telling us what we need to do and how we should dress, but listen to our concerns, listen to when we're saying we're hurting, and not undermining us or gaslighting us. Um, Sorry. Okay, so Peter, hello there. Um, do background checks get done in the industry before people are hired? Nope. No background checks. At least the productions I've worked on, nobody's done background checks. Um, how do we create agency for women in the industry to not only support one another, but to speak up in spaces where conversations are had without feeling ostracized? It's so difficult that because, thank you, Seko H, sorry. it's really difficult because people are still scared of losing work. And for instance, when I spoke out about this person, um, many of us lost work, and even organizations that are supposed to support women um, even ostracized us. And some of the survivors were even told, listen, we cannot associate with you because this organization told you. So, in a situation like that, it's also a lot of the time, it's also us that are doing even more damage. Um, and so, yeah, so we need to unpack that, but we need to be honest about if you do see something happening, and trying to get that collective voice together, because at the end of the day, as I said, people are really, really scared about losing their work and losing their jobs. And I speak on these platforms and I speak about this because I'm proof. Nobody would want to. I had to make the very difficult decision in 2015 that my acting career had to either come to a stop or just end, because no production house in South Africa wanted to hire me because I'm difficult, because I speak out. And then even further, my financial was attacked a couple of years later when I spoke out about this other guy. Um, so it's very, very, very tricky. It's very, very ugly. And that's why we need more stronger support, especially from corporate, especially from those that can do it where they're not going to be affected directly. Um, how do you balance not being triggered and activism? At times, one really wants to raise awareness, but it's so emotionally, especially if you're suffering from PTSD. Now, CPM, 100%. You can't balance. But how I've learned to deal with pain is that I process every feeling. So 2 weeks ago, I had a very, very bad triggering because I felt betrayed in a safe space. And as I said, with PTSD, you can't control what happens to your body. And I believe also the fact that maybe possibly because of what happened, because I tested positive for COVID, and my biggest problem was my chest. And what had happened with this triggering was that it attacked my chest and then attacked other areas of my body. And what I did, instead of just suppressing that, was that I dealt with every emotion. I am speaking from a place of privilege. I have a partner who was supportive of me when I was crying, when I was down and there. But then, 2 days later, I did have to get up and go to work and deal with it, and then come back home and then try and process those emotions. But I'm gonna reach out to you personally and just give a few ideas of what I've done to deal with my PTSD. And in fact, I'll post it. I'll write a blog. That's what this week's blog will be about, on how I personally have dealt with PTSD, with the hope that it could help somebody else. Because for those of you, post-traumatic stress disorder, it can affect us in so many ways. There's depression, there's suicide, there's attempted suicide, which happened with one of the survivors after we spoke about. When we spoke out against the filmmaker. There's fibromyalgia, there's sleeping disorders, there's eating disorders, there's also addictions. It affects all areas of our lives and our bodies, and that's why it's important to provide the support and counseling, but we need to stop it from happening, because it affects our lives, and it affects our living. Irida, my daughter, Detoy, too emotional is the other one. Thank you. Oh, yes, we're way too emotional. I always get that. Thank you, Rosie, for what you do. How can we prevent what happened to Lorata from happening again in terms of legally her arrest? This is where we need support in terms of not supporting perpetrators. Shout out if anybody is in the position to help legally with Lerato, with her legal bills. If you go to her page, there is a press release where you can contact her legal team if you want to support there. But this is where we're working on creating a fund for GBV survivors, who then we get feminist lawyers who are on board and so forth, and just provide the help that we can get. So if you're in a position in your place, if you know people, let's just have that conversation and put that out there. Okay, we really need to define activism, because people out there interviewing perpetrators and complaining to be one. That is infuriating. I am Manasa. Yeah. So, with that situation with her, And I even brought this up with, because I had a conversation with the channel, and my issue was that you can't put a black woman in the firing line, and that's exactly what happened. And we're not taking away the philanthropic work that she does do, but it is, when you put in that firing line as an activist, it is tough, and people think that you're strong, but at the end of the day, remember, we're also emotional creatures, so we are going to break at some point. And that's why also do what you can, even if you're an organization and you want to help women. Don't say or pretend that you're going to be doing something and you can't. This the same organization in South Africa who tried to silence me, find out afterwards that they still were running around trying to get the additional support, which they didn't have in the beginning. And these are the things that I was highlighting. So instead of admitting defeat, going back and forth, and at the end of the day, it's just like, what change has really been made. So yeah, so do what you can, do what you can in your own personal capacity, and if you can't, it's okay. Going back to what the other person says, what happens when you're triggered? That day when I was triggered, I wasn't trying to be bravado. I was like, I said to my partner, I'm like, I'm down. My body was weak. I couldn't do anything. And I accepted that, but it didn't make me, I didn't think myself of being weak. My body was weak and couldn't function. And I gave myself time to build myself up again. And I'm fine. I'm feeling much better now. But that doesn't mean that I'm never going to be triggered again. You know, so yeah. So any other questions? Thank you so much, guys. We're just about to finish. Um, any other suggestions? Any other remarks, or if I get a lot of requests from production and crews saying what is happening on set and what one needs to do. Um, the best thing is that evidence, and people will criticize you for it. I mean, when my nose was broken in Botswana, people criticized me because there was a picture taken and somebody took it and they were like, well, why are you posing for pictures if your nose is broken? But if I didn't have that picture, then I wouldn't have had evidence and I wouldn't have won my case. So if you do see something happening and if you feel that person isn't strong enough to deal with it, step in, write a letter, and keep a paper trail. That's another thing. Keep a paper trail. Write an email. If you have a conversation with somebody, record it. If you can't record it, then follow up with the email saying, listen, in this meeting, remember we said this and this and this and this. So there's a paper trail so that production or management can never say, well, we didn't know, or, it was just hearsay. No, there's a paper trail. We all need to have our eyes and ears, and especially crew. If you see something happening, if you see that your sound guy is groping the actress a little bit too much, reprimand him and reprimand him in front of everybody. This bro code business needs to come to an end. And also, the patriarchal princesses need to just calm down because we are not tolerating that anymore. All very well that you want to be the pick me ladies when you want to be part of the guys club, and I understand that. When I was younger, I also wanted to be there. But it comes to a point where you need to stand for what's right. And as difficult it is, and I've lost friends, but actually I don't give a damn because I'm not prepared to keep quiet any longer, knowing that there's a possibility that an actor or an actress can come onto a set and feel unsafe and be unsafe, and nobody's going to do anything about it. That is not going to happen, not while we're alive, definitely not. So let's see if there's any other questions. But thank you so much. I requested to join about 10 minutes ago. Okay, request again. We've got like another 5 minutes. You want to share your experience? Okay, guys, you know what I'm going to do is that Facebook, I'm going to keep on going. Instagram, I'm just going to end because I want to record this, and then I'm gonna log on again. So follow, and then the person that wanted to love Black Rose, request, and then let's have a conversation. Okay, so I'm gonna go off now, love Black Rose, and then I'm gonna start another live so I can record this one. Let's see if it works. Come on, modern technology. Yes. Okay, sharing. Sorry, everyone on Facebook. I'm going to continue with the conversation, but I just wanted to required. Okay, let me type that in. All right. Live talk. There we go. I don't know. Now Instagram is taking a bit of time. Any other comments or suggestions coming through from Facebook while we're still here? Live talk. There we go. Okay, so let's hope that that will go live and then we can start another one. And we're checking connection and we're live again. Okay. So, add a guest to be in your live video. Yes. Okay, so we're going to wait for Black Rose because I know that this person wanted to share their experience. Okay, cool. Okay, Love Black Rose, request. Okay, there I can see it. There we go. Send request. Let's hope we join. Waiting, waiting. Hopefully they do. Yay, we're coming through. We're coming through. We have liftoff. Hey.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you today?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you again for allowing to give me a space to share, and yeah, truly, truly grateful.
No problem. For the Facebook Live, you want to just introduce yourself?
Okay, I'm Rose, not Rosie.
Another Rose.
Yes, Rose of Pretoria. So I'm Rose Sima, and I am a young filmmaker. I recently graduated for film and television at TT. I majored in directing, editing, and producing.
Wow.
I'm a beast when it comes to producing. So yeah, my story is from a female crew member's point of view. You know, last year I got to work on another production, and around November, in December, by the same production in Limpopo, in Venda. And it was a very exciting moment because I was just about to graduate, and you're thinking about, okay, this is like my bread and butter. And when you're a freelancer, you try to grab it with both hands, especially when you're still trying to build your name within the industry. You're trying to sell yourself for the job that you know you're capable of doing.
Yeah.
And you give it your best, So I did that, and I was very excited. And every job that I've ever worked with, I give it my absolute best. And I'm a very outspoken person. I'm a motivational speaker as well. So I've always been one to advocate. I've always been one to talk, to share and whatnot. And when I got
you have every right to do that. You have every right to be sharing your experiences. Yeah.
Yeah. So when I got there, I started working with a very small crew, and the first incident, I got harassed by two people while I was working there. The first person, and I apologize, I know this is probably going to trigger you and other people, but the first person that harassed me was an actor. He was called in for a day to do a few scenes, and obviously he had told me that I was already comfortable with most of the people there because the crew, I had already been working with them on a previous production. So obviously it's people that I talk to on a normal basis. We joke around, but nothing sexual, nothing intimidating, just normal chats.
Yeah.
And his first comment was, "Oh, you speak a lot for such a young person."
Oh, wow.
And at first I just ignored it because I just kind of have a thick skin. I know how to deal with such people, and I would ignore him. But I see by me ignoring him, it actually got him, it aggravated him to some point, and he actually just started to, throw mean words and try to criticize me and try to bring me down on saying things like, "Oh, you're too forward," or this and that, "Oh, you young kids, you think you know all that, you're too young for this, you speak too much. Oh, one more thing, he's like, you should know when to shut up because you're a woman.
Wow.
My culture, yes. And he said if you were to be married in my culture, half of the things you say, you'd be reprimanded to keep quiet because you're a woman. And again, I decided not to entertain that until a point where he asked for my assistant to call on.
Sorry, your sound seems to have gone down. Go a little bit. It was much louder before. Okay, very barely. So just speak a little bit louder. I can hear you, but I don't think Facebook can hear you. But I'll relay some of what you're saying to Facebook. Wow. So basically, just before you carry on, so what is happening with Rose's incident was that this misogynist actor was on set, tried to break it down initially verbally, and that is also just another form of emotional abuse. And then realizing that it wasn't getting to her, got even more irritated and basically saying, well, as a young person, you speak too much in my culture. Women kind of like know their place, and trying to basically break it down in a place where she has been hired with authority, with agency, and that happens on many occasions. Sorry, do you want to continue? Wow. Yeah. Wow, wow. So this is now moved into a physical space where she reported the guy to the management, and he forcefully grabbed her neck. So it's now it's a physical. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And then what happened after that? Oh no, Rose, where are you? Are you back? Hello? Okay, cool. Mm, wow. Oh man, oh man. So, man, and this happens on such a regular basis. So, um, trigger warning again is that another incident with the DOP, where Rose was assistant director and being sexualized by the DOP, and from her words verbatim saying he needed to go charge the batteries, and when he did do that he was going to masturbate. That is not, it's not funny, it's unnecessary. uh, I'm so sorry, and I hope you receive justice on this case. Mm. But also the fact that so when she made the complaint, they sent the perpetrator to come apologize alone. So number one, putting you back into danger. That person should have been dismissed from set and suspended. There should have been a mediation, but more importantly, before anything that have happened, you should have been awarded the possibility and the place to get counseling and check on your well-being and check on your psyche. So your reaction to that is absolutely normal. Ah, man, I'm so sorry. Mm, yeah. Oh, okay, yeah. That scenario. So basically, what had happened is that it was the same production that all of these crimes happened, and I'm not saying incidents. I'm saying crimes because that's what they are. Is that she said, what is it going to take for the production to do something proper? Does it really mean somebody needs to get raped or killed? And in their defense and approach, which often happens, though we have a small production company, we don't have HR. Well, our industry, no production have HR. No production houses have HR unless they're really, really big ones. Because remember, we don't fall into the Labor Act. But at the same time, you got to stop hiding behind what you don't have and use what you do have. And they had the agency and they could have fired him on the spot. Oh man! And then what transpired after that? Mm. So the person still remained on set. They didn't fire him. Wow. So even after this and Rose asking for, this to be dealt properly, and also this production was taking place in Venda, which is not her home place. Um, the person got off with a verbal warning. Wow. I'm so sorry. Mm. You're just trying to cope. Mm. Yeah. And you have every right to be in this position. You have every right to be that powerful producer that you are and learn and work on your craft. And it's so frustrating. And for those of you who didn't hear, was that, at the end of it, it took a lot to deal with this emotion. And your pain is so, so valid. And people don't realize that that type of trauma, and I mentioned it in the beginning, was that it affects our sleep, it affects our relationships. You're fortunate you had a partner who was there, but at the same time, that's still affecting your relationship because you're not building on your love. He's building on a healing that wasn't his to heal in the first place. So shameful to the production house. And I'm glad you've received the counseling. And what I can say to you, and I say to this to people, is that how I've dealt with my trauma over the years has really really changed, and the process that I'm using now, and it seems to be working, is that whatever emotion comes my way, I just process it. And as difficult as it is, you go through and you think, oh my goodness, I'm going crazy, because you go through pain, you go through frustration. Then at times you're just laughing hysterically because it's just your body is reacting to all of this. You know, it's shock. It's shock, and that's why when people say, well, oh, they just want attention, or they're unstable, or they're overreacting, or so what? Am I not allowed to look at you? Well, if you're going to look at me in a sexualizing way, no, don't look at me. And why do you think it's a right to tell me that when you go change your batteries, the work that you've been paid to do? Why do you think it's necessary to tell me that you masturbate? I mean, that's totally unacceptable. And I think maybe we need a platform to oust producers and production houses, you know, and deem certain production spaces that are unsafe. Has it gotten to that point? Are you part of a production company? Are you shaking in your boots at the moment because you might fall under this category? Yo, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm glad that you've managed to get on set again, but the triggering is real, and your pain is 100% valid. Yeah, yeah. Mm, yeah, yeah, yeah. 100%. Yeah. Giving it knowledge to there are men out there who will not stand for this and will speak up in the environment. Yeah. But I want to extend also to you, and let's take this offline. Send me a message offline, and let's see how I can also assist. And then just, or even if it's just being there as another supportive figure, because I believe you. And if you're speaking about this, there are so many more, and I'm so sorry. Yeah, yeah. Absolutely, and an important point is that assisting each other in our recovery journeys is that, and I've said this and I reiterated this before, is that the healing is not going to take the pain away. It just helps us. It's coping mechanisms for us to deal with everyday life. So when we do have a triggering, we do have a backdrop. It's okay. Our body is reacting to trauma. Our body is reacting to pain, and we're allowed to go through that. And it doesn't mean that you're weak or that you're pathetic and all those other names that are attached to when people have a triggering or petty or all of that. You have that pain is so real, and I'm so sorry that you've been through it. So we definitely let's connect offline and let's just see how we can help, and also just alert other activists, and without bringing too much attention to you, create safe spaces if we can. Thank you. Stay blessed. Wow. So that was Rose. Harrowing story and reality of what happens on our production sets. Camphor's Law Clinic. I would like to extend an invitation for pro bono legal services. Oh my goodness. God bless you. I'm definitely going to send you an email after this. I appreciate that. Um, let's just see if there's any other messages. Thanks, guys. Thanks so much for listening, for joining in. Thank you for being brave and sharing your story, Black Rose. Um, Irida, my daughter Dutoy, says, "Oh my gosh, Black Rose, I'm so sorry." Um, yeah, and I'm angry. I'm angry because you know, and while we do this, I mean, Black Rose, she's young. She could be my daughter. Never mind my baby sister. And if she didn't have the support that she had, this could have damaged her for life. I mean, you already are. You already it does affect your life. But she's finding mechanisms of going in and still pursuing her passion. So what about those people who don't have that, and then their passions are crushed for life? Um, Dorleen says, "So proud of you, Rose." Um, Miss Unatag says, "That is scary." Yeah, it's scary, but it's a scary reality, unfortunately. Um, yeah, I know her sound went, and so just to close off, what Black Rose was saying was that on one production set where she was shooting out of her province, two incidents of harassment happened. Um, there's no sound from me. Is that what you're saying, or was it no sound from Rose? Um, but basically, yeah, no justice was served. But what we're going to do is we're going to, all right, it seems that my sound has gone off. So I'm going to end this talk. But guys, this platform is now open. It's going to be every Monday, speaking through my world, um, and discussing issues of either things that fall into my three passions, which is woman, Africa, and the arts. So whether it's gender-based violence, whether it's empowerment, whether it is anything to do on the arts basis, and also how we can support each other, that is what I want to use this platform for. So thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for listening. I'm sorry about the sound. God bless you all, guys. Thank you.